Welcome to MCO455. If you're in the AB theory class, you'll either be in the A or the B lab class. If you're in the CD theory class, you'll either be in the C or the D lab class. If you're in the EF section, you're either going to be in the E or F lab section. Altogether, there are 6 lab sections and 3 theory sections. So let's look at the AA section first. And you can see that it's laid out with announcements, course outline, new course addendum, faculty information, and so on. Announcements. All labs are in class at Seneca. So that means that any lab evaluations you do for marks will be done in the assigned lab class. Anybody trying to do the lab evaluations outside the class, which you can do, you're going to get a mark of 0. And what I do is I take attendance in the lab class where you're doing the evaluation, and anybody's name that's not there will have that mark change to a 0 because you physically have to be there. Starting in Lab 2, you're also going to have to bring in safety glasses and a wrist strap. So these are very important things. Before you enter class, you're going to have these two when we start Lab 2, as we'll see. This is the intro video that you're watching, and required materials to purchase for MCO455 can be seen by just clicking on this button here. And you can see that this says parts list for summer of 2022, but this part list has not changed now in several years. And the thing that has changed though is you cannot find from any supplier the Freedom K64, which is your main microcontroller board that you're going to use for the course. So what we've done is we populated all the labs with Freedom K64s. And the other thing that's also in the lab is a Grove shield that fits on top of the Freedom K64, so you do not have to purchase either of these 2 items. What you do have to purchase though for this course is all these other items here. Now what you're going to find for each of these items that you do have to purchase, there's a link here, and you're going to find that of all these suppliers, DigiKey is the preferred supplier for all the devices that you do have to buy. Now you can try Mouser or Grove, but this is the best, and I'll tell you why. If you order something from DigiKey, usually it arrives on your doorstep in 48 hours or less. And if there's any issues with the device not functioning properly, they will ship you out one that will work, and they'll again be there within 48 hours without you having to send anything back. So let's take a look, for instance, here for the Grove RGB LCD backlit display. And if you look here, it tells you how many are in stock, which means there's a lot. And you just add to cart, and you do that for all the different devices that are in the list.
New for this semester is the second item in our list here, important dates and deadlines. Now, what it goes through here is things like late tuition payment, when the tuition is due, and things that aren't necessarily involved directly with this particular course. Now, one of the things you'll find down here is that there is a Family Day holiday on February 20th. Now, the new course addendum that we've got here shows us week by week what's going to happen in our course. So let's go down and take a look at the week of February 20th. And we can see here that we have a term test here. So if we were then to go back and take a look at faculty information here and click on the link here for our timetable, the only thing that we have here is a lecture class. What that means is that we're going to have a term test that day, and that's going to be a problem for the EF section only. So since the EF section can't do it on the week of February 20th because it's a holiday, the only thing we can really do is reschedule their term test here back to the week of February 13th. So everything else is going to be fine for everybody else.
One of the more important things in the addendum is it tells you you must pass both the lab and the theory to pass the course. And there's been so many people said, oh, I only failed by 2%. Can you pass me? And the answer is no. Because people that do not do the pre-labs, and we'll talk about that shortly, and we have a way of looking at that with attendance sheets to see whether or not you've been making use of those open labs, and if you haven't, and you get 48%, that's a fail. Sorry. So some of the things that you're going to see here, all evaluations are done in a multiple choice true-false format. There's nothing to be handed in the entire course. All labs are to be pre-done in an open lab before the lab class. In the lab class itself, you're going to be given the lab quiz, and if you do it without pre-doing the lab in an open lab before lab, you're not going to be successful, which means typically you're going to fail the course. All lab quizzes and lab tests must be done in the lab class or your mark will be 0. So there's a short window in which to start the lab evaluations in the lab, so make sure you don't show up late for the lab. And you have to authenticate. There's a number of things you have to do. And if you miss that window to get started, again, your mark will be 0. So you have to come in prepared and you have to be able to be on time. Now, because the theory is taught in a flex mode, you can either do the theory evaluations in class or online. All theory evaluations will have a 15-minute window in which to start the evaluation. If you miss the window, you're not going to be able to start the evaluation, and your mark will be 0. So this is very time critical. However, if you choose to do the evaluation online and you have any internet issues, I will not be able to reset your attempt if something goes wrong and if you're not in the class, because I'm going to be proctoring the people in the class, and so you're on your own. If this happens, you will not be able to restart the evaluation or not allowed to retake it at a later date since you chose to do it online instead of being in the class. To be in the class, you should be bringing a laptop, a tablet, or any device that has a browser such as a phone. And as it says here, students that are in the theory class can have their stuff reset, or we're going to be doing Zoom meetings during the theory class, and we're going to be also doing other things such as using something called Nearpod to give you feedback both online and in class. So if you're in class, the only way you're going to be able to participate in that is to have either a laptop, tablet, or a phone with a browser. And a phone is good enough to do all of the testing for here because they're all multiple choice and true false. There's nothing to be handed in. Since you need your phone to authenticate for any theory test, you can still use your phone. Now in the lab, you're going to be using the computers that are in the lab. You will not be allowed to bring in a laptop or anything else to do the lab quizzes. You have to do those physically on the terminals in the lab itself. Now if you need to contact me, you can just click here and send me an email. What you're going to find is there's going to be Zoom recordings, and these are Zoom recordings you'll find for both the lab here and the theory will be done in that section here. So all your Zoom recordings will be there, and you should be able to look at them. And let's take a look at labs. You have to pre-do the labs that you're doing, starting at Lab 2 in an open lab, because this is where you're going to have access to the Freedom K64 that has the Growth Shield and so forth. So anything in yellow here, these are labs that you have available to you for using the equipment that you need for the lab. There's no excuse not to be able to find some free time in an open lab to do the labs that you're supposed to do. Now that we've talked about that, let's take a look at Lab 1, which is going to be the focus of our course for not only the theory but the lab for the first week. Now anything that's in pink here is a YouTube video. So it's going to show you how to do binary to octal conversion. So one of the exercises, and this is pretty much the overview of what you're going to have for Lab 1, anything in black here in bold is correct, and what you have to do is convert that to octal and make sure that the octal conversion gives you the same answer as here. So anything that's sort of not bold could be a mistake. This is all correct. So when you do convert from binary to octal, you have to make sure that these things are all correct, and if they aren't, you're going to circle them. And the format of the lab quiz, let's take a look at that lab quiz. So let's take a look at it just to give you an idea. If you go to the Lab 1 questions and you say begin, what you're going to find is it's going to say, is this the pattern of things I got wrong? Is this the pattern of things I got wrong? And you're going to basically, by doing Lab 1, have all this filled out ahead of time of what's wrong here, what pattern is wrong here for this question, what pattern is wrong for here where this is now correct and these might not be correct. And it's going to say, is this the pattern of things that you found that were wrong? And that's all you're going to do. Now the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, is that anything in pink here is a YouTube video. So if we click on it, now let's take a look. You can just click and make it go. But here's some of the other things you can do as well. You can say quality and make sure it's the maximum quality that's there. That's number one. Number two, you can say subtitles and you can say English auto-generated and have those. Or you can actually click on this again and auto-translate it into any language of 104 different languages here that you want and have it show up as closed captioning. So there's YouTube videos for just about everything. There's a YouTube video to show you how to do binary to octal, binary to hex. All the things that you need to do are here. On question 2 of Lab 1, there's a video here that takes you through the ASCII chart. And there's also some stuff in the notes. So let's take a look at our notes. And where do you find the notes? You find the textbook here. If we click on it. And let's take a look and see where we find ASCII. So ASCII is actually here on page 25. So what you're going to find here is that this is our hex value. This is the actual character. This is decimal. So if you look at Lab 1 here, we have a 59 here. So let's go back to our embedded thing here. So 59 in hex, if we slide down here, it's in yellow. So 59 hex is a capital letter Y. So if we go back to here, this is a capital letter Y for this letter here. The next letter is a 6F. 6F here is a small o. When we go back here, this will be a capital letter Y, small o. Now, when you get to a 20, it's a space. You can just indicate that by a little underscore here to show that that is indeed a space. And you're basically going to fill in the rest of this message. Now, during the lab quiz, it's going to say, is this your message? And it's going to give you 3 or 4 options. Is this the right message? Is that the right message? And if you fill this in, you'll know what the right message is. Now, in this line here, there's 1 space here, 1 space here, 1 space here, and each space is really a 20 here, 20 here, and 20 here. And it's going to say, are these the hex numbers here for this message? And it also goes through hex calculations, which we're going to be doing. There's a video on doing hex calculations, and you can even use a calculator to do a lot of these hex calculations. We're going to be dealing with things like N, Z, B, and C, whatever those are. We're going to talk about those as we go through our class in our theory section of our course. To get more information, we can go back here to our AB section, which is our theory section. One of the things you're going to find in here is we have video lectures. And video lectures for week 1. Lab 1 Part 1. There's a video using calculators to help with Lab 1. MCO455 course overview, preface, number conversions, ASCII and alternate characters. Notice this is a folder, so you can click here and find out binary to octal, binary to hex. All these things are videos, YouTube videos that you can look at and get information for. Now also what you're going to do is you're going to have practice quizzes. And again, this is going to be related to the addendum. So let's look at our addendum again. And our addendum is set up in this way. Here's week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, all the way up to week 6. Now, there's no real theory being taught in week 7 or 8. So let's go 6. And so this will be for week 7, week 8, and week 9. This is the video lectures for week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then this will be 7, 8, or 9 are the 3 weeks after the break. Also, you have the practice quizzes doing the same thing. So you can actually do these, and this is pretty cool. You can do these as many times as you want to get perfect at something. So for instance, if you had trouble doing number conversions, we can go here. We can begin the quiz. You can do it as many times as you want. It says octal is base 8, which means it has digits 0 to 8, and you should know that's false. So you can go through all this kind of stuff, and it's going to give you all these questions, and it's going to give you the feedback that you need to know whether or not you're doing things right. One of the things you're going to find is that there's no value in you doing the practice quizzes other than to be ready for things for the chapter quizzes, because these give you 0 marks, this gives you 10 marks, the term test gives you 30, and this gives you 20. So by doing the practice quizzes, you're going to prepare yourself for the chapter quizzes, the term test, and the final exam, which are indeed worth marks. Now, this has been a very quick overview of everything in MCO455. Everything is laid out here for both the theory and for the lab. Now, there is a final project, and the final project, you give a couple weeks to try and take all the stuff you've learned from all these different labs, try and figure out code for yourself and do it. And that's a very good exercise, especially if you want to go on and be successful in TPJ, your technical projects course later. It's a burglar alarm system that will work on your board. And what you can do is you can click on this link for the Freedom K64 and download that into your Freedom K64 with all those parts that we talked about earlier. It's going to use practically all of these devices here to make the burglar alarm system work. And all you have to do is drag and drop the bin file and get an idea of how it works physically. And once you do that, you'll have all this interaction working, and then you should be able to, based on that, reverse engineer this as much as you can to sort of get an idea of how that code works, because it's using all of the things you've learned in all your labs and putting it together